Hey folks, this is Rabble Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tornado Tony Penny.
It's like Tom Patrick with his crystal ball on fire tonight. On fire.
Alright.
Tom, did you predict I was getting someone to braid my hair? The crystal ball didn't see that.
Well, there were a few black streaks in it, but I don't know if I connected that with you or classic.
I'll have to send you the picture I found. I was in high school, which was, it was almost 30. It was 1994, so 28 years ago. And a bunch of people from my class took a cruise down the Bahamas. We were all these 17, 18-year-old kids, stupid kids, whatever. They're all acted up and we're down, and I had a mullet at the time, well, actually, like I do now. And so they were getting locals down there to put braids in their hair. So I was like, I put 2 or 3 in mine. And the woman's like, you want it to look good, don't you, man? You want it to look good. I'm like, yeah, but that money. So I came a compromise, and she ended up putting like 30 braids in my hair with beads, and I kept it for like a week or two. And so I kept joking like the last few years as I kept growing my hair. Like, before the Italian festival, I should have them braided again and put red, white, and green beads in it. It wasn't long enough in 2020. I was just starting to do it. And last year, I just forgot. So I was like, you know what? Came up with my Facebook memories. I'm like, maybe I could. And this one girl I know was like, dude, I can totally do that for you. All right. By August 6th, we'll discuss this. I got my younger cousin's mad at me because she's getting married and she doesn't want me wearing the sequin gold tuxedo jacket, which I told her she has no choices. And now she doesn't like the fact that I'm wearing these light up gold high top sneakers to go with it. And once again, she has no choice.
Well, we had a lot of fighting last weekend. We had all 3 of the MMA leagues firing on all cylinders. Great main event at UFC on ESPN 38. I won a little bit of money, not as much as I could have, but it was one of those ones that was very hard to predict. And you didn't really need the main event. The main event, I thought one of those guys was going to knock the other one out, but the pre-fight analysis was pretty spot on. They basically said that Mateusz Gamrot was the kind of guy that will take advantage of it if another guy that he's facing gets deep into a fight and makes mistakes. He's going to capitalize on it. And they said about Arman Tsarukyan that he tends to get wild from time to time. And he was very disciplined in that area in the beginning of the fight, but towards the end of the fight, he was following that diagram to a T. And it was a very interesting fight. I was surprised it was unanimous because I figured it would be a split decision. Styles make fights. And it seemed like, Gamrot did sneak up at the end, but I really thought Tsarukyan dominated the first 3 rounds, so I thought it was going to be a clear decision for him. But they didn't like the technicality aspect of him, and maybe they felt like he was running too much. And then the takedowns towards the end that Gamrot kept getting just made the difference. So I've seen that happen live at a fight too, where I was actually sitting right next to a judge. I wasn't talking to him much during the fight. I felt like that was like against the law of fighting, even though it was a local event. But I said, this guy gets one more takedown, he's going to win this fight. And sure enough, the guy got one more takedown, and it was a very close fight, and he won it. So I think I influenced the judge a little bit on that one. It happens all the time. Takedowns can be so important. That's why wrestling, as much as it can be a non-factor in some fights, in the fights that it is a factor, and it makes all the difference if your wrestling is better than somebody else's. And there's only so many guys that are just picture perfect at takedown defense. And Arman was pretty good at that to begin with, but he just ended up tiring out at the end and letting a couple through. But it was a great fight. I'm sure they'll definitely figure out how to do a rematch at some point. But, it was a wild one. And then we had Neil Magny really stood no chance against Shavkat Rachmanov. He tried to weather the storm, but got himself caught in a slick submission, and that was it. Took Shavkat a little bit longer than a lot of his recent fights, though. Went all the way to the last 2 seconds of the second round. Man, he could not hold on. No. And then before that was one of the ugliest fights I believe I have ever seen in the UFC. It's one of those fights where even if one guy wins, both guys should be fired. Oh, Tony, when you ever have another pupil that you're bringing into your gym, even though it's MMA, you should just show them this fight and say, if these guys can be professional, so can you. To your rawest recruit. Oh, this was a heavyweight fight, too. And both of these guys have had some rough waters the last few fights. But I did my computer analysis, and I picked Josh Parisian. And, I just did, 1 out of 4 cards with Bordeaux in there just for shits and giggles. And there were a lot of shits and giggles in this fight. Oh, Josh pulled it out miraculously, but man, it was sloppy. It was just, you could tell going into the second round, both guys had gas tank issues. And Parisian was just a little bit on the side of above half a tank, I think. He ended up pressing the action just enough, got the TKO, but oh man, what a mess that fight was. I would be embarrassed if I was Dana White that I promoted that fight. Just horrible. None of these guys are going to be moving up the ladder at all. Ugly. But yeah, I'll try to find some lowlights of it, Tony, to show you, and I think you'll even appreciate how ugly it was. Sure, MMA assignment of the week. Then we had a lightweight fight, Thiago Moises. He was one of the ones you had to have. One of the ones I totally missed. Lightweight, you don't expect it. Unless it's a submission expert. And Moises really wasn't jumping out at me as a guy to pick. But he got the rear naked choke in 3 minutes and 5 seconds into the first round of the fight. And then the guy that everybody was expecting to demolish his opponent, Umar Nurmagomedov, had a little bit of a struggle to finish Nathan Maness, but otherwise totally dominated him. Maness was pretty much trying to scramble out of jiu-jitsu moves and wrestling takedowns the entire time. It was a pretty boring outing in that respect, but Nurmagomedov showed he's human at least, and could not finish out his opponent there. And the middleweights, we had Chris Curtis and Rodolfo Vieira. I was very confident in Curtis. I picked him. Thought he would finish Vieira, but did not end up doing that. Just pretty much eked it out. Won a couple, I think 2 out of the 3 rounds. Vieira won 1. And then I did get a good pick in Carlos Ulberg over Tafon and Chukwi. Finished it in the first, 1 minute and 15 seconds in. So you had to have Moises, Ulberg, and then before that, the Fight Club guy, Cody Durden. Fight Club guy's cousin. JP Baez, or Bays, I guess they pronounce it. He was the victim there. TKO from punches, 1 minute and 8 seconds in. So you had to have Durden, Ulberg, and Moises. And then you had Mario Batista in the second fight of the night. Got a rear naked choke in the first round, 2 minutes and 27 seconds in. And then Vanessa Demopoulos was one that I ended up picking. She didn't dispatch Jin Yu Furai though, so I got points, but it's not enough to get the big money. And then a couple more that I missed that weren't a factor in the money winnings on the fantasy was I'm definitely gonna get this wrong. Nerdembiki Shylon beating TJ Brown. That was a unanimous decision. Sergey Morozov at bantamweight beating Raulian Paiva. Unanimous decision. I didn't really watch those too closely. Saw the rest of them. And that was it. We got a big one this weekend, UFC 276. Adesanya versus Jared Canonier in that one. There's the box. thing going on last weekend as well. Not hugely big names, but we had Sam Eggington getting a win over Przemysław Zisk. Hecky Butler over Edwin Soto. Jessica McCaskill winning the big female fight against Alma Ibarra. Artem Hartunian beating Humberto Galindo. Some tough to pronounce names this week. Jesse Rodriguez Franco over Wisaksel Wangek. And Ihosvani Rafael Garcia over Rhino Liebenberg. Another great name for a fighter. Rhino. Yikes. Alright, so Saturday. We got some fights. The big one is Joe Joyce and Christian Hammer. Great name for a fighter. As is Rhino. Would you like to be named Rhino? Fighter. Vixen in Queensland, Australia this Saturday. Big card. Maurice Brightus, 28-1 at cruiserweight, fighting Jai Opataya, who's undefeated at 21-0 for the IBF World Cruiserweight title. Now, I think we all know who Brightus is, but I don't think I've ever heard of Jai Opataya. Got to check his record out. Yeah, it looks like a mismatch on paper, but could just be experience versus talent situation. Joel Camilleri at super welterweight, 22-7-1, fighting Kon Mazoudir, who is just 9-2 for the WBA Oceania super welterweight title. And light heavyweights, Faris Chevalier, who is 13-1, fighting Connor Wallace for the WBA Oceania light heavyweight title, the vacant IBF Pan Pacific light heavyweight title. And here's another great name for a fighter, Isaac Hardman, 12-1, fighting Bo Hardis, who is 6-1. Just a middleweight fight there. Just thought I'd mention that one. A lot of four-namers in this fight in Brazil, but no Jesuses. There's a five-namer if you count the Da. Vinicius Belchior da Silva Zamparati making his debut. Oh, here's the Jesus, De Jesus. We got Daniela De Jesus Aguiar, 1-1, fighting. Oh, that's a female Jesus. It's a 4x2. She's fighting Maria de Moraes Passos, who is 0-2. So female Jesus may not need a miracle. That might be a first on our show. A female Jesus of the week. Jesus fight of the week. Daniela De Jesus Aguiar. Yes, somebody didn't tell her parents that Jesus was a man. We got some fights in Niagara Falls on Saturday. Main event. There's only one worth mentioning. Lucas Body, 11-0, fighting Diego Fabian Eligio, who is 22-7-1. That was for the vacant NABA lightweight title. Fight in France. Somebody's always got to go. No, not one of those. Super welterweights. Jose Gomez, 20-2 is his record. Fighting TBA. The fight is Saturday. That's great. Great matchmaking. TBA. All right. Here's our somebody's going to go fight. It's coming to us from Bayern, Germany. We have Evgeny Shevchenko, 15-0, fighting William Skull, Scull, 18-0. A lot of good boxing names this week. I bet you his nickname is Iron. William Iron Skull. Co-main
I don't like that.
Co-main event, unless the C is pronounced differently, like a shul or something. German people do that all the time. So. They like their SCHs, those Germans. Anyway, super middleweights in the co-main event. Another undefeated fighter, but he's fighting definitely a lesser opponent here. It's 15-0-2 Peter Ivanov against Robert Talarak, who is 26-14 with 3 draws. That one's for the IBF International Super Middleweight title. And then we got welterweights. Karen Chukadzian, 20-1, fighting Blake Minto, who is 14-2-2. That one's for the IBF Intercontinental Welterweight title. And I believe that's a male Karen we're talking about here, because it doesn't specify that's a female title. So we got a female Jesus and a male Karen. Fight cards. Weird. How weird can you be there? I don't think I've ever heard of a guy named Karen. Definitely going to have to send you
I have not.
You know he's going to fight the manager. A male boxer named Karen. From Kiev, Ukraine, believe it or not. Unreal. Got quite the record, too.
Well, growing up in Maine, you got to be tough. That would be like, Canelo Alvarez growing up in Mexico with like this bright red hair. You know he had to be tough.
Yeah. I don't know if that was a thing in the Ukraine, though. I guess it was a thing everywhere, Karen. There's enough English-speaking people over there. They don't have to buy down. Yeah, that's all right. Jai Opataya, looking at his record right now. He's fought some halfway decent talent. Guy with the most fights so far that he's fought, Mark Flanagan. 24-7. He TKO'd in the 8th round. He only fought 2 undefeated fighters recently. It was in 2017, 2008. TKO'd both guys. But they're 10-0 and 7-0. 7-0. TKO'd a guy named Daniel Anman. He's actually the most experienced fighter he's faced. When I look at it, 32-9 was his record at the time. That was a 9th round TKO for a couple of obscure titles. But yeah, nothing that makes me think he's going to beat Maurice Bradis. So his O is probably going to go. He's going to fight Karen next. How must it feel for the guy who's fighting him? Like, when everybody is asking him, who are you fighting next? A guy named Karen. Is he transgender? No. Boxing comedy hour we got going on here. Alright, let's get some serious fights. We don't have John Ruiz fighting this weekend, but we have Juan Ruiz also fighting in Germany.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
He is middleweight fighting at in Hessen, Germany. Fighting Sven Elbier, who's 18-1. Juan Ruiz is 27-6. That's something in common with his heavyweight brethren there. He's talented. Co-main event there, it's nothing special. 10-0 Bujar Tahiri against Dennis Krieger, who's 14-12-2. A ton of red on the right side of this card. One guy fighting, well, this is definitely our mismatch of the week. Light heavyweights. There we got Dennis Liebau, who is 26-3. Light heavyweight fighting Michael Klempert, who is 48-4. Youch. It's maybe tied for this next one, although this guy's got 19 wins, none of them recently. Cruiserweight Nori Safiri, he is 41-10, fighting a guy named Thomas Laska, who is 19-31-1. I'm not talking about the year. I'm talking about 1931. 19-31. There's a guy at heavyweight fighting in Germany. They got TBAs all on the right column, but it's Vincenzo. Good German name, right?
Love it.
Oh, Italian.
Yeah.
Vincenzo Anzalone. His record is 0-15-1. One time. TBA. There's a lot of fights in Germany. What is it, German boxing week or something? We've got the one fight card in Italy. Mohamed Breich, 2-0, versus David Jesus Bosco, 1-1. So we got Muhammad versus Jesus. This is a real religious war going on. Italy, of all places. Is it at the Vatican? Italy. A couple of Italian fights going on. Somebody's lost. Somebody's going to get their second win here in Italy in the middleweight fight. Alberto Rizzi, 1-3-1, fighting Jovan Stojilkovic, who is 1-10. 1-10. Not doing so well. Okay, another one fight card in Italy. Sort of a mismatch here. Emiliano Salvini, 19-37, with 2 draws. Fighting 17-3 Benoit Mano, lightweight. Yep. And here's a more serious one for a title in Japan on Saturday. It's ironic, usually they do their Japanese Asian country fights on Sunday, typically, especially in Japan. But this one's Saturday. It's a light flyweight. Kenichi Horikawa, 41-16 is his record with 1 draw, fighting Shokichi Iwata, who is 8-0 for 3 titles. The vacant WBO Asia Pacific light flyweight title, the OPBF light flyweight title, and the Japanese light flyweight title. Absolutely nothing jumps out at me on the undercard there. We got a big fight card in Nigeria. Nobody has more than 6 wins. There's like 18 fights. Got some fights in Moscow. Main event's really the only interesting.
You got one?
I'm not going to go to that one. The USC Soviet Wings. Sergey Vorobyev, 17-1, fighting Adrian Perez, who is 16-8-1, no title there. Spain, United Kingdom. Here's the Christian Hammer fight. It's going to be on BT Sport over there in the UK. And it's heavyweight Joe Joyce fighting Christian Hammer. It's for the WBC Silver Heavyweight title, the WBO International Heavyweight title. Joe Joyce, 13-0. Christian Hammer, 27-9. Co-main event, it's pretty decent. Super Bantamweights, the lighter guys, but a couple titles. Jason Cunningham, 31-6, fighting Zolani Tete, who is 29-4 for the IBF International Super Bantamweight title and the Commonwealth British Empire Super Bantamweight title. A couple others for titles. Nathan Heaney at middleweight is undefeated at 15-0, fighting Nizar Trimek, who is 9-3-2 for the IBO International Middleweight title. And we got Mark Chamberlain, 10-0, versus Mark Vidal, 13-2, with 5 draws for the vacant IBF European lightweight title. That's pretty much it. That card. Nothing else. I don't know the United States fights going on this week. You got one in Pennsylvania, though. Washington, Pennsylvania. 13-3, Willie Shaw fighting Tyrone Crawley. 7-1-1. And actually, we got a real decent one in the lightweight division. And the undercard, Matt Conway, who was 20-3, lost his last two, fighting Eduardo Pereira dos Reis, who is 24-8. Washington, Pennsylvania. Was that way out west? Tony?
Washington, I think is more towards the western part of the state. I don't know in person, so assuming it's not around the building.
All right, we'll get you press passes. We'll go. The microphone just dropped when I said that. Like I gave a good line. Whoops. All right, so now we go to UFC 276. Adesanya and Canonier. Actually, we gotta cover the one of the best fights I've seen in a long time. Gabriel, no, not Gabriel. What the heck? Gegard Mousasi got demolished by a young buck, coached by none other than one of the wrestling guys from Norwich University, Mike Brown. I do not believe he was in the Corps of Cadets. I'm pretty sure he was a civilian, on the civilian side, as we say. But his boy there, oh my God! Did you see that fight, Tom?
No.
Johnny Eblen. Remember the name? Boy, what a fight! He just pretty much tore him apart. Tore him apart, and it was actually, a lot of very confident wrestling. Did a lot of takedowns, and connected when he needed to with the strikes. A lot of good ground and pound. It was just like a perfect game for him. And the craziest part of the whole thing was when they revealed at the end that Johnny Eblen, who I was talking about last week as, not being much to write home about, because I didn't know anything about him. I pretty much said, yeah, Gegard's going to cruise to his 50th win here. I don't see this 12-0 Johnny Eblen putting up a fight, but boy, did he put up a fight. I believe one of the unanimous decisions had it 50-45. So, just a shutout. 12-0 is the guy. He has only been fighting for 7 years. And by fighting, I mean he walked into the gym 7 years ago knowing nothing about fighting at all. And Mike Brown recognized the talent in him and supposedly said, well, you can hang out at my place and, you can live at my house and I'll train you. And the rest is history. But he is now the Bellator World Champion at middleweight. And this is looking really dangerous. Mousasi's dominated pretty much everybody in Bellator since he crossed over. And he was a big Strikeforce star and everything. He's fought a lot of people. Almost 50 wins. And just got embarrassed out there. Looked like an amateur. So if you get a chance to watch that one, I'll have to find a bootleg copy. Send you a link. It was a good one. Before that, Danny Sabatello beating Leandro Higo. That was a unanimous decision win. And, you got like a guy named Magomed twice. Magomedov beating Enrique Barzola by guillotine choke. Went into the fourth, but ended 1 minute and 27 seconds into that one. Brennan Ward TKO'd Cassius Kane. Cassius with a K. That was a second round TKO from punches. 1 minute and 11 seconds into that round. We had Achilles Motard, lightweight, beating Dan Moret by unanimous decision. Lucas Brennan got a neck crank over Johnny Soto in a submission in the first round. Alexander Chablis over Brett Primus, second round TKO from punches. Kat Zingano got a unanimous decision win over Pam Sorensen for that. Anatoly Chokov beating Muhammad Abdullah by punches TKO 2 minutes and 28 seconds into the first round. Saba Homasi took just under a minute, 58 seconds, to knock out Macon Mendoza. At welterweight, Ilara Joanne at flyweight beating Alejandra Lara by unanimous decision. James Gonzalez at featherweight beat Cody Law by the same result. Aaron Jeffrey at middleweight beat Fabio Aguiar by TKO from knees and punches. 3 minutes and 30 seconds into the second, and the first fight ended quickly as well. Mandel Nalo at lightweight beating Bryce Logan by knockout punch. 1 minute and 7 seconds into round number 1. And we had a big surprise win over this weekend, or surprise loss, I should say. Anthony Pettis got submitted in a very weird manner. It was almost a twister type submission, but basically his freaking rib popped out of socket. So he tapped out, I think mostly due to pain, but it was just a very unorthodox submission. And he was supposedly fine like a couple hours after the fight, after they popped it back in. I didn't even know your ribs could dislocate. And I don't even want to imagine the kind of pain that creates. But he looked like he was hurting. That was in the Professional Fighters League. I'll get that whole card up here in a minute. Professional Fighters League. Also, I know you guys love to talk about Jake Paul. But he's back in the news because of Tommy Fury. He couldn't even make the first press conference because they denied him entry into the United States, which is crazy. And they're speculating in the media that it's related to a criminal conviction of their father that he shares with Tyson Fury. A different mother, I believe. Same father. But I think it might have something more to do with the fact that Tyson Fury is being managed by that Irish mobster, Kinahan. I wouldn't be surprised if it's connected to that because, they're really putting the squeeze on him to get the $5 million reward out for him and all his associates. They've actually shut down his whole boxing operation. They had to transfer ownership and everything and to distance themselves from him over in Dubai. But I don't know if he's still doing anything under the radar there or what. But they haven't caught him yet as far as I know. So maybe they're just trying to alienate all his associates. And if, brothers are close, then you'd imagine Kinahan would be close to both brothers, because he's the manager of Tyson. So I think that's what it's all about. But nobody's brought it up yet, which I'm surprised, because there was a lot of press releases that went around about that whole thing. So we'll see if that makes things difficult for their fight they're supposed to have. But already, of course, Jake Paul is claiming it's an excuse. Just already trying to use excuses, he's saying. But the weird part is he was just allowed into the country to go to California like a few months ago. So that's what even more makes me think it's probably nothing to do with his father. It's got to do with the association with Kinahan. Alright, so Anthony lost to Stephen Ray. That was called the body triangle for some reason. I've never heard of that. But it was 3 minutes and 57 seconds into the second round. Submission. And Showtime 25-13 is his record now. 35 years old. Main event there was Mateus Scheffel beating Bruno Capoloza. That was a big upset. Capoloza was the winner of the big $1 million prize last year, so he came in as the defending champ and Just fell to the aggressive and attacking always Mateus Scheffel. He took a couple hard shots, but I mean, all 3 rounds he was just going down. It was just awesome heavyweight fight to watch. And it just goes to show you, it's not one of those leagues where you can just depend on the result. Even the big stars who had more success last year are facing tougher competition this year. So maybe that, maybe that $1 million check is a great way to produce these type of up-and-comers. Also, we had Klidson Abreu at heavyweight beating Renan Ferreira. That was a unanimous decision. At featherweights, ending in a TKO, 1 minute and 10 seconds in. Kyle Bochniak took the loss to Chris Wade. Ante Delaya at heavyweight, beating Shelton Graves by unanimous decision. We had Bubba Jenkins at featherweight, beating Reynaldo Exon by unanimous decision. All of those on this card. Dennis Goltsov getting one against Maurice Green, also at heavyweight. Heavyweight fights going the distance there. Lance Palmer, featherweight, beating Shimon Moraes by unanimous decision. Juan Adams, also a heavyweight, beating Sam Kay by TKO. Second round, 2 minutes and 30 seconds into that one. Ryoji Kudo beating Alejandro Flores Garcia by knockout punch. 2 minutes and 52 seconds into their fight. And the first fight was a featherweight fight. Brendan Loughnane against Ago Huskick. And Brendan won by unanimous decision there. Okay. So now we are down to upcoming stuff. An upcoming fight here. Adesanya versus Canonier. I don't know. I don't really like Canonier recently. He's kind of disappointed me. I'd like to say that he's probably going to disappoint me in this one, but I've got him. I've got a couple cards going on the fantasy in DraftKings, and I have yet to put my lineup together on FanDuel, but DraftKings was tough because, the guys on this card that you were pretty sure are going to get their knockouts were all very highly priced. Jared Canonier is actually one of the cheapest fighters you can buy on DraftKings for your lineup. So, but he seems very confident. He says, the whole style bender thing isn't going to affect him. And, I mean, he's like one of those guys you expect to just demolish everybody by the way he looks. Like, I always talk about Czech Congo being the perfect example of that. And then, he gets in there and he's like, sometimes he just falls flat. But this time might be different. I don't know. I just got a feeling he could be the one to upset Israel Adesanya, even though his record doesn't really reflect he's that good. He is the one guy I would think that could catch him making a mistake. So I give him that puncher's chance, but I'm going to say that Israel wins this fight. Probably is going to want to try for the knockout or submission win in this one. He's going to be fighting harder for it because he's been knocked for not being able to finish people recently. But yeah, I think Adesanya will get the job done by the end of the third. But I do give Jared Canonier that puncher's chance to surprise everybody. And if he does, I will probably win a lot of money. I got to get everybody else right, though. Anyway. So Canonier, looking at his record, he has strung together a couple good wins. Beat Derek Brunson by knockout in the second round. And Kelvin Gastelum by unanimous decision before that. And lost a unanimous decision to Robert Whittaker. So if you kind of do common opponent math, Israel's got a couple wins over Whittaker. You'd expect him to win by decision. But probably going to be a different fight than we expect. We've also had Canonier losing to pretty much all top competition in the last few years. So, even though he has 5 losses, the last 4 have been to Robert Whittaker, Dominic Reyes, Jan Blachowicz, and Glover Teixeira. And he's been fighting in the UFC since 2015. Sean Jordan before that, too. He's no slouch. We've had him on the show, I believe. Years ago. Years ago. He was the one that was talking about he didn't even like to take his shirt off when he went to pool parties. He has to fight in front of people with his shirt off. The heavyweight. I think that was the one. Anyway. So we got that for the main event, and then if that's not a big enough fight for you, we got the fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Another title fight. It's for the featherweight title, and Volkanovski.
That's such a pick'em fight. That's such a pick'em.
Yeah, Volkanovski is just such a well-rounded player, though, like a fighter. It's just unbelievably good. Just call him a player because he's a rugby player. He actually used to do rugby, so perfectly built for fighting. He just has a chin of steel. Max Holloway, he's not done. Like, he shouldn't retire, but he's just been in so many wars. I worry about him going into a fight like this. You know, another 5-rounder, guaranteed to provide a lot of punishment. Both guys are going to be slugging, but Max, I just don't think he has the ability to pull the trigger and get the knockout anymore. He's basically, I mean, he's more speed than power at this point, and he's going to land points and score points, and you get a couple rounds, but I think the physical toll this is going to take on him is going to make him at least think about retirement after this, because I don't know, he has been through so many of these, and this guy is a killer. It kind of reminds me of how Joanna just went out. Like, I hope it doesn't go that way for Max, but I don't know. Either way, whether he cruises to a win or gets knocked out, it's going to be difficult. But, if the old Max shows up, who is untouchable, and is just as slick defensively as he is offensively, maybe he's on the comeback trail. But I don't know. It's just one of those ones where you watch so many fighters. If you follow the sport long enough, you watch them age, basically. You watch them go from, talk about Anthony Pettis, following him from the beginning. We interviewed his old coach there in Milwaukee, Duke Rufus. He was one of our first big coach interviews back in the day. So watch him go through everything and go from the big leagues down to the feeder leagues now. And Max is one of those guys I've watched a lot of his fights. 23-6. He's lost the 2 to Volkanovski. This will be the 3rd one. He beat Qatar by unanimous decision. That was probably his best performance in a long time. Just totally dominated him. Yair Rodriguez after that. Volkanovski's just on a different level. But I mean, you look at all the 5s in the round column, going back to Dustin. Ortega he beat in the 4th, but that was a 5-round fight too. Doctor stoppage eventually, but Poirier unanimous decision. Volkanovski split and unanimous decision. Those are losses. Edgar went the distance in July. Frankie Edgar, Calvin Kattar went the distance. That was in his heart, but yeah, this will be a tough one for Holloway, especially considering he's lost twice. He's going to have to pull something out of his ass to get this win. But if he's really feeling like his back is against the wall, I know he's won his last 2. You never know. He could pull it out. I just love Volkanovski all around. He's such a great fighter. I believe a lot of people who watch him can learn a lot from him. And I look forward to it. Then we got Sean Strickland at middleweight. He was talked about a lot on this last UFC card. I think I heard at least 3 people mention training with him, because of course we had, because he's at American Top Team with Mike Brown. So we had a lot of Mike Brown's people there. Because, when one of your team's fighters is going, usually 2 or 3 other fighters are going. So I guess Sean Strickland was everybody's favorite training partner and taught them a lot. So I'm thinking Sean's going to have a real good chance of doing much better in this fight than he did in his last one, where he was. I think he main evented and he kind of just fell flat. He wasn't really dynamic as he usually is. But I think he's going to turn around.
Well, he's going to have to. He's going to have to do better.
Yeah.
This is going to be a fascinating challenge for him.
And he's fighting Alex Pereira. He's 5-1. Doesn't seem like that great of a record, but who knows? He's had 2 UFC fights. TKO'd Andreas Michailidis in the first one back in November of last year, and then beat Bruno Silva in March of this year by unanimous decision. So I like Strickland in this one. I don't know. I don't know what his amateur career is. He doesn't have an amateur MMA career, so maybe he did something else before this. But yeah, I do remember Silva versus Pereira was quite the war. So Sean Strickland's in for a tough date, as Tom likes to say. I think he'll handle it.
Well, I mean, if he wins, and if Izzy wins, I guess he's knocking on the door.
Yeah.
But the Izzy fight would really be a challenge for Strickland.
Yep.
That movement. But he's got to get past Pereira first.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It has to be a tune-up fight, or else he's not really going to make any waves, especially going the distance in a pretty lackluster one-sided fight the last time. You know, he just basically jabbed the whole entire fight, and got caught with a lot of straight shots in the process, but weathered out the win. And we got Robbie Lawler back in action first time since he fought Nick Diaz. I shouldn't say Nate. Nate would have probably done better. Robbie is 29-15, fighting Brian Barberena, who is 17-8. And I definitely think Robbie is fighting past his prime, and it's tough. It's tough to judge how he will do against a younger guy after a fight like Nick Diaz, coming off the bench after a long time to fight Nick Diaz, who's coming off the bench even longer period. I don't know how this one's going to go. It's another one where I've just seen Robbie age so much. I've seen him in so many wars, and I just don't like this fight. I think he's going to lose. I think he's going to be embarrassed, and I hate to see it. But I hate to even say it, but I mean, some of the shots that he was hitting Nick Diaz with, it was like, just not doing anything. Nick just basically got hit too many times. I don't even think he was really close to getting fully knocked out when that fight got stopped. It was just like, kind of reminded me of like the Meldrick Taylor of old. It's just not as many knockouts. A lot of speed, no power. So I don't know if he's worked on that or not, but Brian Barberena, talk about no cheap date. He is a real tough cat, and he's got 8 losses, but he's young, he's fierce, and we don't know what Robbie has left. We are definitely going to find out. And this is a good one. Again, it's kind of expected that Sean O'Malley will probably get a knockout. He's 15-1. He keeps knocking people out. He keeps surprising people. Other than that big leg injury he had. He's had a pretty good run here. Pedro Munoz is his opponent. He's had some difficult fights the last few fights. This is kind of like a gatekeeper situation, I believe. Sean's fighting for an opportunity to get to the title, so this is definitely, you got to go through this guy's situation to get there. I don't know. Munoz has had, as I said, a couple rough outings. He lost to Dominic Cruz in December, and then before that, Jose Aldo, both by unanimous decision. The only fighter he's beaten in his last 5 is Jimmy Rivera, back in February of last year, by unanimous decision. Lost to Frankie Edgar before that, and Aljamain Sterling. So, Sean O'Malley is hoping to be the next guy to beat him. Let's see. Brad Riddell in a lightweight fight, coming in at 10-2 against Jalen Turner, who is 12-5. But don't let the 5 fool you, because he's on quite the streak. He has been knocking people out like crazy. He's had a lot of first-round finishes. It's very rare for a lightweight, but I've got him on my lineup. I'm counting on him to have the hot hand, even against the guy with only 2 losses. Brad Riddell I don't think has fought the same caliber of people. He has a little bit less UFC experience. I did my number crunching earlier, so that's why I'm making more predictions this week. Then we got Jim Miller versus Donald Cerrone. I would have picked one of these guys, or both of them, on different cards, but I just had the feeling that Jim got lucky with his last fight in the stoppage. He's not really usually a stoppage kind of guy. But he's 34-16. Donald is 36-16. Obviously, the Joe Lazon fight got scrapped because it was canceled for the 3rd or 4th time. I don't know which. But this is a great stand-in. 2 journeymen. Both of them got a ton of fights. Almost exactly the same records. I mean, Jim Miller is 2 wins short of Donald Cerrone's exact record. So this should be interesting, and it's probably going to go to decision just because it's so well matched on paper, and they've both got so much experience. So I stayed away from that one. Ian Gary against Gabriel Green. That's another interesting one. Gary's undefeated at 9-0 at welterweight, but Green's a very talented fighter at 11-3. That could go anyway. I stayed away from that one. And then Brad Tavares against Dricius Duplessis. Tavares is 19-6 and Duplessis is 16-2. Duplessis I got in my lineup because he has a lot of submissions early on in fights. And I know Tavares has experience, but even the most experienced people can get caught in a submission. I don't look for the knockout. I don't think it's going to be that kind of a fight, but Tavares might be capable of one if he gets it into deep water and escapes all the early submissions. But I think Duplessis is going to pull that off again. He's going to get a nice, easy early win. And Tavares is going to take lucky number 7 for a loss. And here is one of the ones I believe should be in the main card, but they stuck it way down in the preliminaries. Uriah Hall, 17-10 at middleweight, fighting Andre Muniz, who is 22-4. Muniz is the favorite. Talk about a guy with a lot of submissions, but Uriah Hall has that flash knockout potential, and he should not be slept on for any reason. So that one, I mean, if you're doing fantasy lineups, you got to have one or the other on the card, because that one is not going the distance. Jessica I in a flyweight fight. She's 15-10, fighting Macy Barber, who's 10-2. I'm going to go with Barber on that one. No offense to your buddy Joey I if he's related, but I like Macy for that one. Bantamweights in the first fight of the night. Jessica Rose Clark, 11-7, fighting Julia Stoliarenko, who is 9-6-2. Yeah, be a great fight card and lineup. What else have we had? Stories to chat about. Floyd Mayweather and Conor MacGregor talking rematch. Apparently Floyd wants this more than Conor. Floyd is the one that supposedly made the offer, from what I read. And they're saying it's going to be, he offered him $160 million for the fight to be in Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi. Middle East, I think is all they said so far. $160 million. But Dana White has already come out and said it's not happening. Which is weird because he obviously made some money off the first one. He found a way to co-promote it. But I think at this point, with the whole Francis Ngannou situation and possibly luring him back to the UFC in the cards, I think it's going to be a situation there where he's not going to want to promote another boxing match because he's going to be afraid everybody's going to come knocking down the door trying to get their own boxing match associated with the UFC. And it's going to fuck up all his plans for a future UFC card because everybody's going to want to box. So that's the whole reason I believe he's scrapped stuff of boxing too, which was a complete joke from the beginning. But Some people took it seriously enough to put out T-shirts. Bet those will be collector's items someday. Oh, here's a story. Sarah Kaufman has announced her retirement from MMA. Announced her retirement today on social media. And we've got a Bellator fighter I just read is going to the WWE. Valerie Lareda, mixed martial artist from the Bellator League. Is going over to the WWE. Alright, what else we got? Jared Canonier wants to be one with everything. Well then. Alright, what else? Oh, we have football story to talk about. A couple NFL footballers going to be fighting each other. So
I heard about that.
A couple weeks ago, we were talking about Frank Gore getting his first big boxing win. Now we've got Adrian Peterson and Le'Veon Bell, the battle of the running backs. Not a good look for a guy that has been busted for beating his child, but Adrian Peterson and Le'Veon Bell. Obviously, I think it makes sense more for Le'Veon Bell, because he can't seem to keep a team, and when he gets on a team, he just gets thrown to the third string position pretty quickly. But Adrian's had, I think, a longer career. But both great running backs in their primes, and now they're going to have a title for the best fighting running back. So anyway, they're going to use 12-ounce gloves. It's going to be July 30th at the Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles. And it's going to be a part of a pay-per-view featuring Austin McBroom and Anna Enson Gibb. I think there must be a couple YouTubers or something. Oh yeah, it sounds like a YouTuber situation. Former NBA star Nick Young is also scheduled to fight rapper Blueface in what will likely be an exhibition match. Well, so Peterson is a former NFL MVP and 4-time All-Pro. Currently ranks as the NFL's fifth all-time leading rusher with 14,918 yards. Gotta get back in there, get those 82 yards, get to 15. He's also scored 126 total touchdowns, played 4 games, and accumulated 38 carries for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns, playing for Tennessee and Seattle in 2021. And best known for his Vikings days from 2007 to 2016. And Bell is a 2-time All-Pro dual-threat running back who has totaled 9,843 yards and 51 touchdowns total, rushing and receiving over 96 games since entering the league in 2013. Who's going to win that one, Tony? What's your prediction there?
The good one, I'm going with AB.
AB. All right. Yep. Adrian Broner? No, just kidding.
I didn't say AB, I said AP.
Oh, AD. AP.
AP.
AP. Adrian Peterson.
As in Adrian Peterson.
Oh, all right. Yeah. I'm curious, where do you get that thought? What makes you pick him?
Because he was on my fantasy team one year, and we did real well. Yeah. That's a great question. I just think Peterson a little bit more, I'm trying to think of the right word to use here, balanced.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about style. I'm not talking about fighting ability. I'm talking about, like, as Mr. Miyagi would say in The Karate Kid, need balance. Have life, and you do Bell. You know, where Le'Veon Bell is more of a head case. You know, he would sign for a team and then never show up. Demand trade. He just seems like he's kind of, you know, whimsical anymore, and he's kind of, you know, unreliable. And I think Peterson's, you know, level-headedness will be the key here.
Yeah. Well, that's good perspective. I mean, you got to look at it like in their sporting careers. You know, obviously Adrian has had the better, longer career. You know, and he's got more accolades. But it's also, like you said, probably a character issue, number one, and number two, just a work ethic issue. If Le'Veon Bell can't seem to find a team, even though he hasn't been in the league as long as Adrian Peterson, that he can stick with and be number one starter, even number two. Like, you know, he doesn't even do half the drives anymore. He used to be like the leading guy for years, and just dropped right off the map. So this sounds like more of a money grab for Bell than something he's got to take seriously. But Peterson might take it seriously. He might be in the Frank Gore camp.
And I think you were like Peterson back in like 2014 was the consensus number one fantasy football player, you know, drafted in like 95% of the drafts out there. Le'Veon Bell was the same thing probably in 17 or 18. So it's like, you know, Peterson shows right there it has had a longer shelf life. But at the same time, you know, yeah, you talk about work ethic, and then you talk about level-headedness too. You know, when I can see Le'Veon Bell being like a kind of team cancer, and could it be from a concussion that he took back when he was playing? Possibly, because, you know, all of a sudden he became, I think it was against Cincinnati, he took a cheap shot from Vontaze Burfict.
Oh, yeah. Vontaze Burfict. I remember him. There was a particular game where the quarterback, I believe, had the same number as he had. It was a college game. And they had actually played together in high school. And I forget the name of the quarterback, but Burfict, man, he hit that quarterback so hard on the line of scrimmage as he was scrambling outside. And then Burfict, like, helped him up and everything. They shook hands and they had a little laugh. But, I mean, oh, my God, it was one of the best hits I've ever seen. And then to find out they went to high school together, it's like, nah, that's got to be rough. And you've got the same number? Crazy. But anyway, yeah. I'll always remember that just because it was the craziest hit I've ever seen. Anyway. Oh, Vince McMahon's situation keeps getting worse. Now he's got a rape allegation against him. Former referee Rita Chatterton was interviewed for the first time in decades by New York Magazine. And it's the guy that is actually the author of an unauthorized Vince McMahon autobiography. And
but here's the thing. Rita Chatterton was with them back in like the late 80s.
Yep.
And this allegation was brought up 20-some years longer. And so why is she now trying to get her name back into the equation?
Me too. It's obvious. But anyway.
Like, I literally have a book I bought probably back in like the early 2000s. Because it was called like The Untrue or The Untold Story of Vince McMahon and the History of Professional Wrestling. The person that wrote it was, you could tell I'm not a wrestling fan, because a lot of the facts were skewed. And basically the book was just bashing Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. Just ripped those two, the entire book. And it would have a chapter like talking about Ric Flair, and next thing you know, it's bashing Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon. But, you know, reading the book, it's like, wait a minute, growing up as a wrestling fan, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3, and blah, blah, blah. And did Andre's career? No, it didn't. He wrestled for 5 more years. And then so up until like a month or so before he died. And they're talking about this, and I'm like, yeah, I don't remember that happening either. You know, just from watching it. But I remember the Rita Chatterton incident, and that book is a good 20 years old.
All right.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why now she's getting her name back out there.
Yeah, it sounds like most of her allegations are just being repeated from what she said on an interview with Geraldo back in the day. In the 90s. So, who knows? But she claims basically that Vince McMahon proposed that she either satisfy him or she was going to get, pun intended, I guess, blackballed from the industry. So she supposedly just did it to, get the job and avoid getting stigmatized or whatever. So, anyway, and obviously with the stuff that just came out about him, having some affair with a lawyer, of all people, probably it's another situation of people trying to find more stuff to hunt him down with the Me Too stuff. That's how it always goes with these situations too, and it's just, there's a lot of people's names that got caught up with that, and you got to imagine that there's got to be some people that were caught up in it as just kind of innocent bystanders, and just accidentally might have brushed up against somebody, and then boom, oh, he sexually assaulted me. What the hell? Anyway, all kinds of craziness. But Vince, probably not going to be doing many public appearances with the WWE anytime soon. Alright, we got Mikey Garcia.
What's funny, it's like he's been showing up
Go ahead.
on some of the shows, and he's just been like, when he shows up, it's almost like defiantly.
He's the real heel.
A couple times.
That's what he should call himself. He should do a masked wrestler routine and call himself the real heel. Anyway, Mikey Garcia, going to boxing, former 4-division champion, has confirmed this past Tuesday that he is retiring from boxing. Also has a brother, pretty famous, named Robert Garcia, the big-time boxing trainer. And his brother says, my brother Mikey had a great boxing career, becoming a 5-time champion of the world in 4 divisions is something very few have done. I am very proud of my brother for everything he accomplished in boxing. Now it's time for him to enjoy his life together with his family and loved ones. Ended up with a record of 40-2 with 30 knockouts. And he was at welterweight for the final 2 fights, which was a unanimous victory over Jesse Vargas in February before he dropped a majority decision to Sandor Martin in October in a major upset. Beaten,
I think that loss he took a couple years ago to Errol Spence really, really hurt him. Not as much marquee, because a few months later I was in Las Vegas and he had a booth, and thinking of my weekend, a lot of the Mexican fighters were showing, obviously very popular over there. But, he was, popular over there. But I think that loss to Spence almost mortalized him, because he had been really destroying guys. And that fight with Spence, he got, whitewashed every round. And, then you had the break with the pandemic and all that. And, when he came back, he didn't look like he was the same fighter. Kind of reminded me of, Prince Nazim Hamed. He had that loss to Barrera. He came back. He had one fight, didn't look that good, and he was like, you know what, I'm done. Felix Trinidad, he had that loss to Hopkins. He fought a few months later. He fought a guy like Hassani Sharif or whatever. and didn't look all that good, knocked Sharif out. And then and he went away for a couple of years before he finally came back. Had a few fights before he then lost to Roy Jones and called it a career. But, like, a lot of times when you have guys that have really been dominating and they had that first loss, if you see in their first comeback fight, you can almost see, like, that fire's been extinguished. They may win, but they don't look really good. And sometimes after that, they're like, okay, it's time to go.
Yeah. Logan Paul makes a WWE announcement. Well then. Somebody's mad at his brother for getting too much attention. Anyway, we do have another story too. Big baby. Emphasis on the big. Jarrell Miller.
That's the truth.
341 pounds. Fought for the first time since 2018 down in Argentina. Fought a guy who was a local favorite, Ariel Esteban Bracamonte. And he beat him by, guess what? 10-round decision. That's odd.
Yeah.
You would think with that much weight behind him, you would have been able to knock the guy out.
I'm glad you brought that one up, Red. I'm glad you brought that one up, because that's one where, right there, when you look at it, you can tell. You know, he had those things with the illegal substances or whatever he was on, but he was destroying guys. He was knocking guys out, and then, you know, he looked like he could be the next big thing, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he had the suspension, you know, for the PEDs, and then he comes back, and you're right, he's 341. What was he before he started training? 450? I don't know.
Right.
And I'm saying that. I'm just saying that. Well, what was he before that? Now, you had a guy that was destroying guys in rounds, 3 rounds. I mean, destroying guys. Now he goes to 10-round distance. Say, hey, it's a good sign he went 10 rounds. You know, at that weight, you know, is that one where that weight's slowing him down so much where he couldn't get the combinations off, where he couldn't, you know, go out there and beat guys because he just, you know, couldn't pull the trigger like he used to? Is he maybe doesn't have the power that he once did, maybe because of slowing him down, or maybe because he doesn't have the enhancing drugs? I don't know. This fight asks more questions.
Yeah. He ended up winning 97-92 on all scorecards. Both fighters lost their mouthpiece during the final round. And he pretty much, surprisingly, poured it on late, which you wouldn't expect from a heavier fighter, but both guys looked out of shape as far as their midsections in the picture they have on this article. But the funniest part of this whole thing, Tony, is what the event was called. It was called the WBA KO to Drugs Festival.
Appropriate.
First fight back from being on drugs at the Casino Buenos Aires in Argentina. Funny stuff. Alright, I guess that's the final news item I have. Except this Logan Paul thing. Let me check that out. Oh, Logan Paul makes huge WWE announcement. Took to Twitter today to announce that he has officially signed with WWE. He shared a photo of the contract signing at WWE headquarters, which was overseen by Triple H and interim WWE chairwoman and CEO Stephanie McMahon. So there you go. He's going to be a wrestler. I think. I don't know. Maybe he's just going to be a commentator. Let's see. He last appeared on WWE programming at WrestleMania 38, where he teamed with The Miz to defeat Rey Mysterio and his son Dominic in a tag team match. After the match, Miz drilled Paul into the canvas with a skull-crushing finale. Paul said during his signing that he'll be looking for revenge against The Miz, specifying SummerSlam on July 30th. Love it. So yeah, that's interesting. From YouTube to WWE. Frickin' Paul. Both of those brothers. Crazy story. Alright, that's it for us. Until next week.
Alright, guys.
More to
Enjoy
talk
the
about.
All right. Have a
Yes,
good
sir.
weekend. Have a good holiday weekend.
Yeah, 4th of July. Forgot to even mention that. Don't
Just
party too hard.
Numbers on the same.
Don't blow any fingers off people. Be safe with your fireworks.
Yeah.
And that's probably why there's not a lot of United States boxing events this weekend. Everybody's going to be partying elsewhere.
Right.
Alright.
All right, guys. Have a good weekend.
Alright, adios. Talk to you next week.